Welcome back to Module 6. We'll spend some time talking about personnel, or staff as it's also being called. Personnel, as you will see on this side, is probably the most valuable asset in your business, in your healthcare practice. So let's look at it, and let's look at the few issues that can make or break your practice. Initially, when I started as a clinician, I was trained as a clinician, and I found over the years that dealing with people is one of the most challenging and tiresome things you can do. We are not just clinicians, we are also managers, and managers have to deal with other people. We have to manage ourselves, our staff members, and the patients that come and see us. So, dealing with personnel, initially I thought I could train people, get them all together, get the right vibe going, and then it would be over and I could sit back and relax. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's an ongoing process. Emphasis is on process. It carries on and on. It's not a project. So the sooner you get involved in that, the better for everyone around. Without staff, you can't do a thing. In fact, without staff, our practices are dead. We are in a human environment, and we need humans to run that environment. And people are complicated things. It's difficult to motivate them sometimes. It can be frustrating to get them on the same vibe as you are, to see the same things. As I've mentioned in earlier modules, we each have got a different view of the world. So how do you manage to get everyone onto the same team? Because ultimately it is a team. And there are many parallels that we can have to sports teams, soccer teams, and so on. Performance is intimately related to how you as a team are interacting. Start working on your personnel before they start working on you. This is as simple as that. Let's get going. If you look at the human factor, human costs or personnel costs are far bigger than just about any other issue. Depending on what practice you run, you can say personnel costs may be your highest expenditure. In dentistry, it probably is close to the highest. You have sometimes materials higher or whatever. In countries like America, where personnel costs are higher, we find that up to 20% of a dental practice, the costs are related to personnel. If we look at costs and man hours, we can say very simply, if you've got a sample practice with 3 staff members, together they will get 13 salaries, which comes to something on 260,000 Rand a year. As a provider, if you want 20,000 Rand a month, you add a 13th check for yourself, that's another 260,000. So the human component in that environment is well over 500,000. Now, if you think for 500,000, you could buy a lot of equipment or a lot of office furniture or whatever. And it's stuff that you pay once and you need to have something to show for it. What do you have to show for it? Is motivated people that work with you. They mustn't work for you. Now, how do you manage? First of all, you start and you say, decide what do you need to get done? What do you need your people for that work for you or with you? How much is it going to cost you? Let's have a look. First of all, how many people do we need? Do we need them the whole day? Do we need them half day? Can they change over? And can they do duties that the others can't do? In other words, could you possibly have somebody coming in the morning doing something while her kids are at school and then be replaced with another person that is more suitable in the afternoon? Another issue that we look at is cross-training. In our environment, what we like to do is when we've got a new staff member, we start training her in one position, make it the reception, which is the easiest, straightforward. Those are the skills you can learn very easily because most people can talk, they can answer the phone. So now you have to fine-tune it and explain why they should answer the phone in a certain way. From there, they move to other positions. In our situation, they will start at the reception. They will do a little stint where the instruments get sterilized and cleaned. They will spend a week or two in the laboratory to learn the basics of the laboratory. And then eventually they move to the chair side, where they get trained specifically. I know in South Africa it's not that easy, because a person at the chair side needs to have specific skills and she needs to be registered. But still, if she works at the chair side, it doesn't mean she cannot work the reception. And if you swap them around, there are many benefits to this, and we'll talk about that just now. Lastly, think of a backup system. If you've had somebody that's worked for you, and for some reason or other, they have to leave you. Say their husband wants them to work for them, or they move to another position, or their kids need their time. See if you can't negotiate a situation where you find that they might come in to help you out for a week or so. In our environment, 2 of my previous chairside assistants, whenever I'm in trouble, say somebody is sick or somebody can't be there, I can call on them and they will come and help me out for that week, which is ideal, because ultimately it'll make the practice carry on running. If you don't have that, it puts an enormous amount of stress on the remaining members. These are all ideas, and there's quite a bit in the manual. Read through it, get an idea of what you can do and what you can't do. Once again, attend to the 80-20 principle and try and look at the key issues. Which staff member could you do without with? Could you do without a lab person, for instance, or somebody who does the filing or whatever? Could you do the filing after hours? Things like that. How much do they cost? Depending on your overheads in the practice, in dental practice, staff can cost 15% of your turnover. As I've said, other countries it might be higher. Once again, get a grip, and you will get it from your budget spreadsheets that you've filled in at this stage, that you've looked at before, and see what happens in your own practice. How do you hire them? If we're looking for a person, our knee-jerk reaction would be to put an advert in the paper. If you do that, the information going out to the public is sent to thousands and thousands of people that read that advert. And consequently, you might end up with 90 or 100 applications, which you have to sift through. And you still don't know if it's the right person. There's been no pre-selection. So let's look at that. Then who should you employ? What skills do they need? What personalities do they need? If you look at these 2 animals in this case, the one's good for eating, the other one's good for climbing trees. It depends on what you need. So determine up front what you are actually looking for. Don't just advertise and hope it'll fall into place by itself. It normally doesn't happen. If you read this quickly, it's so true. Let's look at the advertising. When we find somebody new, the ideal thing is to go to your existing staff and ask them and say, in your environment, in the people that you know, is there anybody that you can think of that would be suitable for that job? First of all, these people know what's required in your business. They can go out and pre-select a person that they might find suitable. Chances are they will look in your close environment, and they'll do this verbally. In other words, it'll be one-to-one. It's much more efficient and effective in finding the right person. Because they will look in their close environment, the person who will eventually come and apply for the job is likely to have her family, her children in that area. In other words, there won't be any problems with the schooling. It's not a person who will come from another town who has to move to your area first. The husband might be in a position close by anyway, and she might have been a person whose kids have just left school, who hasn't worked all the time, and now wants to get back into some sort of half-day or full-day employment. So these are the common sense starting points. If you don't come right with that, you can eventually go to advertising. But start by looking at personality. We all know that today people have to end in written information. In other words, you get a pack of papers which is supposedly representing that person. Now, quite honestly, to a certain extent it does, but it's not always the whole truth. Because paper, what the previous employer writes on a piece of paper is very limited. He will never write out any problems that have occurred. He will only say the things that were good or mediocre. So you get half a picture. And then start hunting out the box. If it's a person that does not have to work in a specific position that is required to be registered by some sort of council, you can walk around and pick up people that have struck you. It might be a lady at a till in a supermarket, but she might have a fantastic personality and she might create a very positive impression on you when you go do your shopping every day. This person will leave the same impression in your business, in your practice, if she works at the reception. So why not go and ask her and say, would you be interested in working for a physiotherapist as a receptionist? Think out the box. Don't only look within your professional field, and be open to new ideas and new people coming in. Don't only look at young people. The one group that is very reliable sometimes and is very capable is, as I say, is mothers where the kids have left the home who have now got the time to start working. Often they have had a job before the kids arrived. They have then spent the time looking after the family, raising the kids, supporting their afternoon activities, and they're now prepared to go back into some sort of position. These people are often mature, they're reliable, and they're quite happy to do things that you can do, that you can provide for in a practice. Because they have managed families, they show a lot of initiative. So there again, don't just think of somebody who's been trained at XYZ, unless you have to register. If it's the right person, she might do a great job in this position. When you advertise, and this is, as I say, the final straw, don't just advertise. Put a little bit of thought into what you write into the paper. And there's an example in your folder, I've put it up here, that actually markets your practice, that predefines the requirements that you want there. This one focuses a lot on personality. It does not focus so much on the skills that are required, but you want the right person. If you've got the great person, you can train them. They can learn the additional skills that they need for that position. But if you've got a person who's got the skills, but who's got a weak personality, you find it very, very traumatic to integrate her and to change her personality. In fact, it might be a futile exercise. Personalities. Now, what do we look for when we say personalities? This is an example of a personality evaluation that I used. There are many others. It's very simple and it groups you into 4 different sections. Have a look there. At the top left, you've got what we call a people's person. Then you've got the organizer, top right. The right bottom, she's a perfectionist. And then top left, she's just a peaceful person. On the left, we've got the people skills. On the right, we've got efficiency. And many of us are a mixture of these 4. If you've got a people's person, these are the guys that are bubbly, they're chatty, they're always in amongst a group of people, laughing, giggling, they're very animated, and sometimes they are just lovely to have, although they might be a bit disorganized. The opposite on the right is the organizer. She's often more quiet, but very specific. Everything gets done in the right way, and she takes over. Often she takes initiative. She will be great if she does your bookkeeping, if she does your figures, and so on. The perfectionist at the bottom there, they are great workers because they want to please you. They want to get everything right. The tricky part with a perfectionist is if something is not done the way you want it done and you have to correct them or change something, you might find that you say something to the extent, but Judy, can't we do it like this and this? And the person will respond and say, I knew I did it all wrong. I know I can never please you. They fall down easily. So they're very tricky to handle. Why do I say that? I'm one myself. I want to have things done exactly the right way. If somebody corrects me, I find it very, very hard to take. On the other hand, whatever they do very, very well. The last one is a peaceful person. Now, a peaceful person, she's like you get these pictures from these lighthouse towers in the middle of the sea with all the waves breaking around them. They're just solid. They will sit there and everything will be chaos around them. Nothing rattles them. They just carry on in their quiet, happy way. If you have a PC standing there with a keyboard and a glass of water just keels over and falls into the keyboard, they'll just say, hi. Nothing will rattle them. So what's the ideal situation? You've got two sheets there in your spreadsheets. They're called personality profile. And the ones, it's called a form, which is basically just a printed document, and you hand that to whoever you want to evaluate. You can do it yourself. And then there's a string of profiles that the person has to choose. If you look at the 4 columns, you will pick one in each column on each level. In other words, it's either the first, second, or third, or the fourth. And then you go one row down and you do the same. And the person has to pick the one that appeals to them the best. And you do the whole thing like that. Then you get that written form back and you put it into the interactive spreadsheet by putting a 1 into each corresponding field. And at the bottom, you will see that it kicks out the numbers with the profile. In this case, on the bottom left, you will see popular and good with people. There's a 4. That's 4 out of 10. The next one says powerful and independent. There's a 13, which is just above average. And the third one is perfectionist and fussy. That is a 20, which is very high. And the last one, peaceful and easy to please. I can giggle about this because that's my profile. Now, if I had to work for somebody, this would be quite a bad profile, unless my position would require that. For me, being a dentist in my environment, it's good because I need to be able to make decisions. I need to be powerful and independent. I need to be fussy to do what I do correctly and neatly. But I battle to work with other people. And if you've got a profile like this, sit down, look at it, enjoy it, play with it, give it to your staff members. You can use it as a guideline for new people that you're interviewing. It's not everything, but it helps you select the person that you might think is right for that position. Most of my staff members that work for me have got a pretty balanced profile. They need to be pretty organized. They also need to be good with people. And the more you can balance it, in other words, all these values at the bottom should be more or less the same. You'll find you've got a very nice person that fits into a healthcare environment beautifully. We don't work with machines, we work with people. So take note of this and use it to your benefit. Let's move on. When you interview, you get all the written information. You sit down and you study it. And you will find that a lot of it is repetition. Try and pick out some special characters or things that strike you. The person that is different will even stick out in their interviews. They might write a note that is special, and they might say something that is interesting to you. They might also have a background that you think is interesting and that might fit into your practice environment. Then you call them in and you try and find out 3 things. First, you search for commitment. In other words, what sort of characters has this person got? We always call it, that's the stuff you learn at home. In other words, are they punctual? Are they potentially honest? All the things that their parents have taught them. Do they understand that taking paper from the practice is not correct? Do they understand that using the photocopy machine for their kids' homework is not correct? The second part you look for is competence. Those are things that they learn at school, after they leave home, probably even in tertiary education. And the last thing I would like to introduce is the chemistry. How do they go about dealing with their peers? You can have very competent people, but they might have a fight with every staff member around them. And you can't have that, because ultimately it comes back to you. If the vibe is bad inside your practice, these things will come and they backfire. You cannot afford that in a healthcare environment. One little tip, and I learned the hard way. A couple of years ago, when I started in January, one of my chairside assistants came and told me she couldn't work anymore for me because her husband had asked to work for her. And the other one fell ill because of something. She had something with her feet. She couldn't stand anymore, so that she also couldn't carry on. So I was stranded without anybody, and I was desperate. And all the advice I'm giving her now, I didn't have then, and I didn't do. I put an advert in the paper. I got 90 odd applications, and I had to filter through them. And the one thing that was interesting, the one applicant had put a photo of herself in there, and she had a beautiful face, well-groomed young face, and being a male, that's when I stopped reading. I thought, this is it, this is what I need. She'd done some modeling, she'd been at reception, and she had computer skills. And I phoned her, and in desperation I said, look, when can you start work? I also didn't understand that somebody who can just start, because she said, I can actually start tomorrow. That also should have warned me, because a person that is valuable is normally employed. She is just not at home, and she would not just be able to come the next day. But as I said, the crocodile was there, and I didn't think any further. So I phoned her, I said, okay, can you come tomorrow? She said yes. And as Namibia is a small country, I don't know how it came out. 2 hours later, a guy that I know pretty well phoned me, and he said to me, I hear you are thinking of employing XYZ. And I said, yes, why are you asking? He says, look, I don't want to become involved, but I just need to tell you, you better phone her previous boss. He said he wasn't going to be involved, but he was involved already. Anyway, I said, why do you say that? He says, well, just phone him. So this I did. I went back and I phoned her previous boss, which was an elderly gentleman, and he was very straight and very helpful. He said, look, I've had this person for 4 years or 5 years. She's had 3 warnings. The problems were involved. There was alcohol. She's busy getting a divorce. She had misappropriated funds in my work. All the things that you could not have had in a healthcare environment. So then I had to go back to this person, phone her again and apologize, and said to her, look, I'm afraid I phoned your previous employer, and as you will understand, I can't employ you. She says, no, I understand. And I said, I'm sorry, I should have done more homework, I should have interviewed you, but I hope you understand that I can't employ you the next morning. And that has taught me a valuable lesson. Please do go and phone the references. Find out about what these people have done, are they valuable, and if that person would employ them again if they had the chance. Because verbally people will help you, and they will tell you exactly what's good or bad. I don't think we generally want to run down good employees. So if an employee has been very good, his previous employer will say so, and she will get a good job again, and you can look after them. And it'll be better for everyone in the long run. Now, first of all, when people arrive and after the final interviews and you agree on the conditions, get it down and write an agreement. Conditions of employment, write a list of duties. There are some examples in the folder as well. They pertain to dentistry, but you can just add your own likes and dislikes, take your own practice, think up the requirements, look at those lists and modify them as you seem fit. Also, there are some Word documents which you can copy and change for your likings. Explain a bonus system. If you do have a bonus system, explain how it works so that they know how it works up front. And then lastly, explain how evaluations work. There are hundreds of different ways to evaluate the staff members. What I think is quite a nice way, which works very well in our environment, there's a list of points, and I've got a list and the staff members got a list, and I normally give them the list to go and evaluate themselves. They get 2 days and then they hand it back to me. I do the same, independent of them. And then we each take our lists and we sit next to each other. And the emphasis is next to each other. We sit and we compare notes, because I believe my evaluation is just as valid as her evaluation. She sees it from her side, I see it from my side. And we come to an agreement. And you will also see that all the evaluations are out of 10. In other words, there are 25 questions on which they will evaluate themselves, and they will get a 10 or an 8 or a 6 or whatever for each, and it adds up to an end mark. And you multiply that mark and you get to a percentage, and they will get 80% or 90% or 50%. I use that to give them their increases. In other words, the evaluation boils back to a performance-related something, and it's reasonably and it's measurable. So everybody knows how it works. And as I said before, their input is just as valid as mine. It's fair. And the second stage of that is that I ask them to evaluate me. Now, I don't get a salary change, but at least I know what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. And it's very interesting. When these questionnaires come back and I've evaluated myself for always being punctual, my staff members will say, look, this guy's never on time. He always sits on the telephone in his office when the patient's in the chair already. And it's tricky for us to accept that, but it's normally true because they see it every day. So use that opportunity, get some feedback onto yourself, and then take it from there. It's really a tool. It helps you. It makes it better for everyone. Before you employ somebody, get your paperwork in order. In today's environment, that's even more tricky. If you need to, in Southern Africa, try and get another professional to come and look at the documents to help you with it. Because if you're not clued up, it can be a minefield. And it can cost you a lot of trauma and a lot of money to get rid of a person or to do things, to rectify things if they haven't been done correctly from the beginning. How do you train these staff members? What's the easiest way? The old way was to bring them in and then start bit by bit, one-to-one training. I've mentioned practice manuals before. And practice manuals, as I've said, are books. In our case, it's 200 pages of exactly how the practice is going to work. So when a new member arrives, she gets given this book. And she has to sit and learn it even before she walks into the practice. So the day she walks into the practice, she's got a pretty good idea of what's expected. Every franchise does it. They have got the same documentation. If a young member walks in, they will know how to dress, how to greet the guests, how to do exactly what's expected. It's a written down account of what the business is supposed to run. Then you go and you welcome them, and we allocate a mentor. Normally it's a senior staff member that I believe has got the potential to train a younger person. The benefits of it are, number one, they normally form a bond, which is great, because an elder person or the senior in that position often likes training a new person, showing them the way it's done. The younger person gets a lot of attention, helping her to get integrated into the system. Remember, the manual is the guideline. And she goes through certain stages, as I said. They might start at the reception, go to other stations. Why? So that she's got a clear idea of who does what in the practice. And then also, once again, the evaluation system gets explained to them, it gets shown to them so they know what to expect. Get those new people in every, you say once a week. Ask them how they're doing. Then you do it once a month, and then you do it regularly. How are you feeling? Do you need more help with this? Are you comfortable with this? They need some feedback too. And then watch them, how they're doing. Praise them. It's easy. If you know how to do it, you can do it. And it is hugely, hugely valuable. We always think money is the one issue. Money is not the only issue. A simple thank you or a simple praise does wonders to the morale of people that are trained. We should form a team. Staff should not work for us. They should be part of the whole group. If you can train properly, you can delegate more. And this is the only leverage we as healthcare professionals normally have got. Delegating within the practice. In other words, you do not have to do every little thing yourself. The more trained your staff are, the more empowered they feel and the better they perform. If you just have them there handing you instruments, you can understand that eventually they will get bored. Any intelligent person will get bored, they will get demotivated, and it won't be any benefit to you or the practice. If you look at their self-image, if you have a person who's got a high self-image and you let them do low-image jobs, in other words, you've got a secretary and you say to her, please take this bucket and wash my car. She might do it once, she might do it twice, but eventually it'll blow up. She won't do it forever because you're actually running her down emotionally. So what do? If you want to elevate your staff, you give them duties that are a little bit above their level of skill. Remember, I spoke earlier on in another module to put them into the stretch zone. Help them to grow. Help them to do more complicated jobs. Help them to get more responsibility. Eventually, you'll end up with a person that is balanced. Unfortunately, the balanced person, where their self-image and the jobs they do are absolutely in sync, is also in that position where there's no challenge anymore. Try and push them out there. Try and give them jobs up so that their self-image can follow and grow with the position that you give them. They start with a bottom, you move them up, but as they move, you keep them growing. With that, their self-image, their happiness will grow. People don't get paid for doing things. So when you look at a salary, don't just look at what she does physically. Look at that complete package. Can you trust her when you're not there? Will she switch off the air conditions by herself? Will she look after the plants by herself without you asking? So in other words, you pay for the amount of responsibility that that member is willing to carry. You don't just pay for physical work. To sum it up, responsibility equals value equals remuneration. So, what is remuneration? Traditionally, you would say it's a good paycheck. But have you seen people that work somewhere that get a huge amount paid every month, and eventually they say to you, I can't handle it anymore. The place is so horrible. My boss, he's such a miserable guy. I can't, no matter what they'll pay me, I won't work there anymore. So, if we look at remuneration, I believe there are three things. It's financial remuneration, which is a paycheck, which is the money they take home. I call it environmental. Are your rooms nice? Do they have a photocopy machine that works well? Is the telephone system working? You will often discover this when you go into your practice on the weekend. You want to do some photocopies for your daughter. The first page jams, second page jams, and eventually you are so frustrated that you say, look, I don't know how these guys work. They also don't know how they work. They are just battling every day. So go and sort that out. Ask them what they need and provide it to them. Give them a decent chair. Give them nice instruments. Look after them. Give them facilities where they can leave their handbags, where they can make a sandwich, that they feel comfortable, that they enjoy being there, irrespective of money. And the last one, and ladies and gentlemen, it's probably one of the most important ones. And I, as a young dentist, never understood this idea until one day it hit me in the face. I was working on a patient, it was hot, and I was battling with something. And in my frustration, we didn't have an air conditioner at that stage, I just couldn't afford one. I took a pair of scissors that was blunt and I threw it out the window. I was so cross. I couldn't contain myself. And a staff member that was working for me, she got upset because she felt it was something against her, which it wasn't. I stomped out, got into my office, and the next thing I heard these feet behind me, and she came stomping in. Now she was an excellent member of staff. She had worked in the bank for 9 years. She had worked for the previous GP doctor in town for 9 years. She knew all the patients. She had a bookkeeping background. She was just amazing, and she was a fantastic person. She walked in and she said, "You know what? You behave like a little brat. If you want me to leave, you can tell me now. We are carrying you, we're rolling out the red carpet for you, and you don't ever see that." And she was absolutely right. She gave me absolute hell in my own office. And I sat there dumbfolded. But I understood at that stage that she was correct. I apologized and I started looking at their side of the coin. I started reading books. And in one of the books, it had a lot of little tips about how to say thank you and all that. And it had the recommendation of getting some flowers for your staff members, for your ladies. So this is what I did. Got some flowers, 3 bunches of flowers, called them into my office. You know, and when you call them into your office, they're normally a bit, worried. So I hauled out these flowers and I gave them the flowers. The result, they were all in tears. But they were actually tears of joy. They were so happy just that I said thank you. And there's an old saying, you can give a lady a red rose to say I love you, or you can give her a red Ferrari. They just about achieve the same thing, but the rose is much, much cheaper. So think of the emotional reward you give them. Say thank you. Say thanks for being here. Thanks for making these samis every day. Thanks for switching off the air conditions. Thanks for checking the alarm. Nothing is for granted. Appreciate what they do for you, because they do a huge amount for you every day. Evaluation I've mentioned. I think you can go back to your manual, have a look at that system. You can change it, you can put in new ideas, but have some sort of system in place that everyone understands. Because if it's just you that evaluates them, I believe it's not fair enough. And it might lead to perception where you can do what you want with them and they can't get back at you, which obviously doesn't work. So let you and her evaluate them and let they evaluate you back, just to get some feedback. Future planning. What do we mean with future planning? If you look at these points here on the left, every year I give my staff members a short sheet. There's an example there too. I want to know what would they like changed in their working environment. What are they expecting to earn in a year's time? Are they going to have a family? Are they going to have kids next year? Are they going to move away? What's their husband doing? Are they doing any sport? Are they exercising? Are they getting involved socially in activities? What do they do to develop their own personality? Do they do courses or something like that? It's not that I'm quizzy to find out, it's just that I'm interested. If you can help them with some of these things, go and help them. If you can't help them and they want to do it, at least you know what to expect and you can correct or you can compensate or you can make arrangements for future developments. Just get involved in their lives to the extent that you know that you can help them bring out the best in their position, in your business. Satisfaction for staff members is the same as satisfaction with patients. It is stimulated and controlled to a large extent by Maslow's human needs and by equity theory. If your staff member feels that they are getting more than they are giving, they feel indebted and they will do even more for you. If they feel that they are getting just the same, they're they're okay, but they're not very motivated, they're not thrilled with you. And if they feel that they give more than they get, they're in this zone of defection. They will actively look for a new job and they'll drop you with a revenge feeling at the worst possible time. So acknowledge this and start working on it. You have had the other modules where all these tools are explained to you. Try and utilize them for your own personnel. And invest time and money in the asset that can make or break you. It's been proven time and time again. Businesses that are trustworthy and that have got the right staff culture outperform other business by 200 to 300%. So don't think your staff will do things by themselves. You need to become involved, you need to manage it, you need to take control. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the final module.